Welcome once again to This Just In, the show that sounds like a news show but really isn't. It might become one someday. Who knows? We'll go ahead and get started with some housekeeping. First off, if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please go sure to follow and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Trying to get a little bit more traction on the YouTube side of things. Liking the video and, hitting the subscribe button really helps things out. Try to get up in the YouTube algorithm. If you're listening to this on a podcast service like Apple Podcasts, go ahead and drop it a review in Apple Podcasts. That is the best thing that you can do for me. And beyond that, share it with people. Share it with somebody who is interested in people. Share it with strangers. Share it everywhere. I'm so bad at self-promotion, but I really do love doing this show, and there is really cool things that come out of it, and I think that everybody can kind of get a little something out of it. But that's it for that. Let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes. This week's episode, I sat down with Ralph Sutton. Now, Ralph Sutton was a longtime veteran of radio. Before that, he was a strip club DJ. He was a hacker. He's done so much. But most recently, he is the owner of the Gas Digital Network, along with Louis J. Gomez. And the Gas Digital Network is actually a podcasting network based out of New York that has a lot of different shows on it. Specifically, it also has the SDR Show, which is Ralph's show that he does with usually Big Jay Oakerson, and then they'll have different guests like comedians, rock stars, porn stars, and it's a very early Howard Stern vibe. It's a very fun vibe with that show. And it's a blast to listen to. They're funny. It's, raunchy, and like I love raunchy comedy, so sign me up. But it's, Ralph is just a great guy. Like he had no reason to, respond back to me with like some questions that I sent him. And not only did he, answer to some questions, he also said that he would love, would be on the show. And that's amazing for a small show like me. I had a blast with this, and we're definitely going to have him on again. When I say we, I mean me. I'm definitely going to have him back on. I didn't get to everything that I wanted to talk to him about, but it still is such a good listen. Just sit back, enjoy, and say hello to Ralph Sutton.
With me today is the esteemed Ralph Sutton, a rock DJ, podcast network owner, a lot more that I can't even begin to get to. Ralph has lived a life, and so I want to take a moment and thank him for coming on This Just In, the show that sounds like a news show, but isn't a news show at all. It's just me talking to whoever the fuck I want. So thanks a lot for taking the time. How are you doing?
No worries, man. Thank you for having me. I like your bizarre polka dotty background on over your left shoulder.
Yeah, me and my wife, we bought this house about 5 years ago. A child used to reside in this room back before we were a part of this house, and we just never changed it.
Oh, fair enough. I have no problem with that. I like it.
Yeah, I feel like it adds some character.
Yeah.
But man, so the Ralph Sutton. I got questions for you, my guy.
Please, that's what I'm here for, man. Look, I appreciate you having me on. I always like doing new shows. I think it's great, and I am an open book. I try never to not answer anything. I think that it's better to be as transparent as you possibly can.
And I don't think it's possible to host a show like the SDR Show on the Gas Digital Network without being completely open and honest.
Yeah. I remember once we had Robert Kelly on. He's a brilliant comedian guy, right? And he was the first time on my show, and we were just talking about how bad I was in bed with some girl. I forgot what the why exactly. But he's like, dude, people listen to this. Like, why are you saying that? Like, he could not believe that I would be making fun of myself that much. Whereas I'd rather just be honest,
That's awesome. Yeah, Robert Kelly is the best, man. I actually just listened to him on a show that left the network. Sorry to bring it up, but the Are You Garbage guys.
Yeah, thanks to them, we now have a new. So we've never had clauses in our contracts, but because of what happened with them, we now have the AYG clause, which is preventing people from leaving the network too quickly.
I gotcha. Didn't mean to bring up the source subject.
Oh, I know. I mean, look, I like the guys are nice guys, you know, and I think it's a good show. And the most important thing was that I went on and I was distinctly told that I am not garbage, and that's all that really matters.
Well, I don't know about that because I looked into your history, my friend. I looked into your history. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't say that you're garbage, but you got a story, man. And I like to talk to people who have stories. So I always wanted to be in radio when I was a kid. I was from a small town. I didn't understand how to make that a reality. And that's one of the beautiful and really terrifying things about podcasting and the internet is that anybody can make a podcast. So it's amazing that anybody can do it because you get these people who normally wouldn't have that opportunity that are able to make these great shows, the Legion of Skanks, the SDR shows, the Believe You Me's, all that stuff. So I guess my biggest question for you is what is it, or what are some of your favorite memories from that time of being a DJ?
Radio or nightclub?
We'll go radio first.
Okay. Well, for sure. So, you know, the interesting story really quickly is I had always been told that I had a voice for radio, even at a very young age. I have a very powerful, loud voice. It's just who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. And always was told anytime I would call like a customer service line or whatever, they're like, oh, you should do radio. And I had always been a big fan of music in general. So I always felt that I should look into radio as a potential career. In college, I tried out for the radio station there and got hired. I mean, it wasn't like you had to pass any test or anything, but I didn't realize, so such a neophyte in the world of radio, when I was trying out, I get to pull all the music I wanted to play. And then when I got the job, they're like, oh, no, these are the 12 songs you have to play this hour, and that's it. I'm like, well, that's not fun. I thought it would be more, I get to have a personality on air, and that just wasn't the case. So I never actually did a shift in the studio of the station in Albany because I just got like disenchanted when I realized you didn't have a chance, right? Fast forward 15 years or so, I was a strip club DJ, and the guy that started on a day before me, he was working the day shift, I was working the night shift. He was obviously talented on a microphone, but didn't know what he was doing in a strip club. Turns out he was a radio DJ making extra cash at the strip club. And I told him, I've always wanted to fucking do radio. He got me an audition. They said, okay, come in and train. So I drove, it was 2 hours from my house. I went in 2 hours to get there right before midnight to train with somebody. The guy is fighting with his girlfriend, the night guy, on the hotline. And then finally, like, he's making me just sit and watch and like barely acknowledging me. And he goes, oh, this does this does this, but just watch me. Tomorrow night we'll do better. Just, pay attention. Then the overnight guy never came in. So at midnight, with like 30 minutes of bullshit training, he wants to go home and argue with his girlfriend. So he just says to me, you know what, dude, good luck. And he left me with no training. And that's how I started in radio. And in the morning when the program director came in, goes, what the fuck are you doing here? I told him the story. And he goes, I guess you got a job. And that's how I started in radio, And I did it for a while, overnights, and then eventually got my own show. And that show got syndicated at its height to be at about 100 stations around the country. That show, there are so many memories. The one that always I use as an example very often, it's the one that sticks out the most because I was such a fan of this band Queensryche. If you're not, over 40, you probably never heard of them, but I was a huge, huge fucking fan. Posters on my wall, blah, blah, blah. And they were coming in to do an interview, but one thing led to another. They couldn't come into the studio. They came to my house. And if you Google, this is, by the way, 20 years ago when this wasn't as common, you Google Queensryche live in bedroom, and there's the band that I grew up with performing live in my bedroom, my favorite song by the band. That was a surreal moment for me.
Man, that is crazy. I can't imagine having somebody who really formed your youth
Yeah.
Playing a show in your
in your bedroom. Whoever your Queensryche is, we all have one of them. You know, they're the one of only two bands I waited online to buy a record for when their new record came out. You know, and to have them sitting in your bedroom playing your favorite song for you only, really. You know, then it was going to go out on the radio show. But just was crazy to me, and to become friends with these bands that I idolized growing up was unbelievable. Never once took it for granted to be able to do that, and always appreciative that most of my adult life, from 29 when I started in radio to now, to just be doing what we're doing right now and make a living out of it is a blessing. It really is a blessing.
Oh, yeah, that is. I mean, there's no real word for it, and I don't mean it pejoratively, but it's crazy. It's crazy that that's a possibility.
Yeah, Lewis, my business partner, and I, the G and the S of gas, we often joke, it's amazing that whatever stupid shit you could think of coming out of your mouth, and then you get paid for it. It's a bizarre thing, but it's great. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, but it is definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. That is true. I mean, I do this as, a part-time thing. I do it in between my 9 to 5, and, it is work. Like it is, it pulls me away from my family. My wife loves that I do it and hates that I do it at the same time. She loves that I have like a positive output for just all my craziness. And then, she just hates that I'm like, oh, I got to edit. I got to do this show on this night. Sorry. But it really is a crazy thing, and we live in the time that anybody can do it. And
it's a beautiful thing. It's a blessing and a curse, because everyone can do it. It's great and terrible because there's so much shit out there. Yeah. When I was doing radio, there was maybe 10 radio jobs in New York, and that was it. And I remember when Big Jay, and I've told this story before, but when Big Jay asked me to do a podcast with him, this I guess like 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago, my response was, dude, podcasting is for people that can't do radio, and I'm doing radio, so why would I do a podcast? Like, I was confused by it. And then over the course of that year, started reading about how big podcasting was. And then we started it a year later.
That's awesome. And you bring up Big Jay and Louis J. Gomez. I want to know, how did you get to know Big Jay and then eventually Louis J. Gomez, or vice versa if it happened?
Right. It was Big Jay first. So I was hosting this rock music cruise that I hosted for 10 years called Shiprocked. Mm-hmm. And the first couple of years I did it, they were only like half the boat, and they would rent out half the rooms and whatever. That's it. Then the year they went, and I always think if it was the third or fourth year, but let's just for argument's sake say it was the third year, they went to a full boat. Mm-hmm. So they said, let's just do more than just music. Maybe we'll bring on some comedians. Maybe we'll do like some other forms of entertainment other than just bands, right? So they asked me, do you know any rock and roll comedians? And the way I had met Big Jay was a few years prior. There's this comedian named Craig Gass who became super famous from, if you're a Howard Stern fan, he's the one that created the Gene Simmons voice on Howard Stern, and he would do Al Pacino and Adam Sandler. Great voice, impressionist and comedian. And one night we went to go see a band. It was like Poison, Cinderella, Warrant, like one of them used to do those tours back when bands could tour, not like now. And I was with Craig, and we decided to go see a comedy show with a couple of guys in some of the bands. After the concert was done, Jay was performing, and he recognized the guy from Cinderella from the crowd. He goes, "Hey, is that Fred Curry from Cinderella?" And I was like, well, if he fucking knows who that is, he should come on my radio show, because that would be great, because he was funny and whatever. So that was, at this point, probably close to 20 years ago, right? Or 15 years ago. And we became friends. And like once in a while, he'd ask me for concert tickets, or I'd want to go to a comedy show, and we just stayed friends. And then when that Shiprock thing happened, I was like, yeah, I know a guy. And I reached out to Big Jay, and Big Jay came on, and that's how I met him. And then through him, I did Legion of Skanks early in maybe the second or third year a couple of times. And that's how I met Louis and Dave. And that's how the whole thing started. And what happened was, sorry to be so long-winded, but Louis and I would trade ideas on how to build your podcast, right? Like we would talk about things now, I guess 5 years ago, what was working for me, what was working for him. His show Rap was on one network, mine was on another. What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? And then we just started talking about it at the time, because I was still doing radio. And I said to him, I'm not sure which one of us came up with the idea first, but we kind of both had the same idea. My thought process was, with radio, the show's on 100 kind of small stations. You put them all together, we had 250,000 people listening every week, right?
Yeah.
Let's do that with podcasts. Let's get a few podcasts together, and then we could sell it as a bigger audience. And that's how we originally started Gas Digital.
Yeah, the Gas Digital Network, which is available to all people right now. Go ahead and give the folks a promo code.
Yeah, it's very easy. If you go to @GasDigital, it's everywhere. My promo code for the show is SDR, and that gives you at least for another, I don't know when this is coming out, but till the end of this month of March, you get a 2-week free trial. Starting April 1st, it goes to a 1-week free trial, but you do get 20% off, and you try it out. And I just want you to listen. If you want to support by subscribing, by all means, but the newest 15, soon to be 20 episodes are always free everywhere. YouTube, iTunes, whatever.
And what Ralph won't tell you is all you have to do is be a subscriber and he will come on your podcast.
It's funny. I am a psychopath in that, and you can attest to this. I answer every email. I go to bed with nothing in my inbox. I respond to everything always. It's as long as it's manageable, which it still is somewhat manageable, I will respond to every DM, every email, every single thing all the time. What I'm not good at is the social media side of it. If you send me a message like as a comment on like my Instagram, I seldom reply to those. But if you DM me or email me, I always respond.
Yeah, I mean, I was honestly kidding, but that's a good way to do it. I mean, it's a good way to get your name into more circles that you wouldn't naturally get into otherwise. So that's really,
yeah. And I tell my staff always ask me like, how do you always get everything done? And I get up at 5 a.m. every fucking day, and I just try and live. Lewis says this the best with your podcast. Like, if you're not living and breathing your podcast, you come off disingenuous, you know, and you should always be living. And I think he, better than anybody, does that. And I as well, like, I live and breathe, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I accept the drugs part, but the other two, I think I got covered pretty well.
I would agree with that. So Gas Digital is actually coming up on its 3rd birthday. Where do you see the network in 7 years?
Well, it's funny. I think we're actually 3rd in the studio space.
Oh,
that's when I consider when we really opened. Like, to me,
Gotcha.
The first year and a half we were doing it here, and this is my 2nd bedroom. It looked a little different than it is now, but that's where we started. And I looked at the first year and a half, we were just kind of fucking around, trying to figure out what we were going to do. Then we started to make a little bit of money and started looking for a space. We took that space 4 years ago in January of last year, right? I think so. But it took like 6 months to build the studio. So I think in June, it'll be 4 years there in that space.
Okay.
I think I could be wrong, 3 or 4, maybe 4. It might be 3. I'm not 100% sure. But what's amazing is that COVID, while it almost destroyed us, like everybody, we came out the other end of it, assuming we're on the other end of it, way better than ever before. So March of last year, 1 year ago today, this week, when they closed down New York City, we had to be like, I got on a Zoom call with my entire staff. It's like, every producer, before they lock down the studios, let's go meet in the studios. Let's go figure out who needs a camera, who needs a microphone, who needs a laptop. Let's get it to all the hosts. And we didn't miss anything. We had no advertising revenue March, April, May, because nobody was, one of our biggest sponsors was fucking sports betting. There's no sports. What are you going to be advertising? So it got scary, but we had this call, Lewis and I remember us saying, dude, if we're going to go down, let's fucking go down in flames. Let's add shows. Let's raise prices. Let's not fire anybody, and let's not miss a beat and see what happens. And we got through it. It's amazing. We got through it.
Yeah, that really is amazing, because not a lot of people get to say that. And the fact that you guys were able to stay the course, and it really is one of those things that as long as you stayed the course, the people were going to come, because they had nothing to do.
And no shows were being, regular network television did not exist. No shows were being done. We were one of the few places you knew every single day of the week there was going to be a couple of hours of entertainment.
Like there hasn't been anything like this since the writer's strike back in like 2007, when you think about it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But even then, there'd be reality shows because they didn't require writers. They just required editors to create a story. Yeah. Exactly. I looked at a couple of them recently that I couldn't believe how scripted they were. But at least in thinking 2007, it wasn't as bad as it is now with scripted, reality. But so there was still something. But this time there was nothing. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that it worked out for you guys. I mean, I'm a newer subscriber of the Gas Digital Network, and obviously I'm gonna take a moment and say thanks. You guys really do put out quality stuff.
I tell you, I've done a lot of consulting for podcasting, and I did it for CBS Radio a couple of years ago. And to me, what I tell every podcaster, you should never be happy with your show. You could always get it better. You could, if you have 100,000 listeners, why not 200,000? If you have 500 listeners, why not 1,000? Whatever that metric is, always better. I'm like right now trying to redo our theme song. I always want to redo the artwork, there's always something you can improve, and you should always look to do that.
Definitely.
Unless you're Joe fucking Rogan, which there's one of, who it's funny because his graphics and they've never changed, but he's the only one. There's nobody else you could say that is on that level that has that. I mean, not that his production quality is bad, but it's minimal. It really is minimal, where no one else does that. He's an anomaly in the business.
Yeah. And I feel like that comes from a different way of success, which is less care, more reward. I don't know how to break it down, because he does do it in a way that I don't want to say is less care. I want to say maybe it started off that way, where he just kind of cared a little less and it was just kind of something to do. But there is a little something of that did lead, him to become the podcaster that Spotify wants to throw ridiculous amounts of money at.
Right. And also I think he's super talented dude, obviously, but there's something to be said of when you're doing this he was one of the first 15 years already, whatever it is, it's become part of the zeitgeist. You just listen to Joe Rogan. It's what you do. It's like he's the Johnny Carson of this generation, where you just would put Johnny Carson on because that's what people did, So I don't know. I can't say yes or no, but like if he started this show today, I doubt he would get to where he is now. I can't say for sure, but being that he's been in it before everybody, it's just the guy you would listen to.
Yeah. That is crazy to think about. So
I don't know.
You started the SDR show on All Things Comedy, correct?
Well, we started it without a network first, and it's funny.
Solo,
we recorded about
all time.
Yeah, we recorded about 6 episodes, and then what was funny was a couple of the people that were on those first shows asked me, "Hey, dude, when is that podcast that I recorded coming out?" I was like, "Yeah, I should figure out how to release the podcast." Like, I didn't know. I knew to record audio and how to record and edit audio because from radio days, but I don't know what the fucking RSS feed was. And 6 years ago, it wasn't as easy as it is now. There's not ways to just automatically get your show out. We had to figure it out. And Jay's not tech savvy. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll figure it out. So I spent a weekend figuring out how to do it. And we released the first 6 or 7 episodes. And then I'd say within about 3 or 4 months, we got on All Things Comedy. And this is by no means a slight to All Things Comedy, but they are not a network as much as they are an affiliation. They're not doing anything for you as a network. At least at the time, you didn't get a studio, you didn't get ad sales, you didn't get bookings, you got nothing. So it was just to say, hey, we're on All Things Comedy. It was just a fun thing to say. So after a year of being there, I was like, that's when we started Gas Digital. I felt like, well, nothing has happened. What are we doing? It's just a name. It doesn't mean anything.
Wow, that's interesting. So how long were you with All Things Comedy?
About a year.
A year.
Yeah.
And then during that time, you were having those conversations with Lewis, and then kind of.
Yeah, and he was on Rap. Rap was on Stand Up Labs, which I don't think exists anymore. It was Stand Up New York, the comedy club's podcast network, and Legion of Skanks was on Kumia, which is Kumia. It's called Compound Media.
Yeah.
And so that we had 3 different network experiences. Plus, Lewis worked for Sirius XM, and I had worked in radio, and I've been with various like broadcasting companies over the years. So we just kind of had a very diverse, like we kind of saw behind the curtain in a lot of different scenarios, and we're able to say what we liked and didn't like from the different places that we worked.
Wow.
And kind of
That's
picked and
really
choose the
interesting.
elements that way. Oh, we like the way Sirius XM does this, and we like the way All Things Comedy did this, and just kind of built our business model based on that.
Yeah, you were able to Frankenstein it, and now it's doing better than
I get
ever,
it. I
which
look
is
like Frankenstein.
awesome.
I get it. Thank you very much.
No, but you know what I mean. Like you take a little column A, little column B, and you make
100%.
your own thing, and
also
it really
it's
is
also
something.
very much, it's still a work in progress. Like we're going to go to 20 episodes. We started with 10, then we went to 12, then we went to 15, and recently we said, well, you know, if your show has like 300 episodes, you could put out 20 episodes. Big deal, you know. So I think April 1st we're going to 20 episodes.
And it's totally worth to go back and listen to those old shows. I've been myself going back and listening to old SDR shows and old skank shows, and it not only is it great content, but it also is a time capsule of whatever period that it came out in. It's actually a really cool thing.
And what's funny is that you realize that, which this was not the case in radio. I have people hit me up all the time and they'll ask me a question about a show that I did 6 years ago. Like, oh, whatever happened? And I'm like, what are you talking? Like, I don't even remember 6 years ago. I have to go listen to it. But in radio, you said it once and that was it. It was gone. If you didn't listen to it then, you never heard about it again. It was that time. So the idea that these things live forever is kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah. It's something that you don't get in other mediums.
Right, for sure.
So where do you see the network when it's celebrating like its 10-year anniversary?
Good question. So to me, where I really want to see us expand is in scripted programming. I think that we should have a half a dozen scripted shows that live exclusively on the network, a la Netflix, which will really set us apart from every other podcast network. I would like to also, we did 2 stand-up specials, both went to #1. Obviously nowadays you can't do that anymore, but in the world we live in, but I think it was an area that we were good at, and I'd love to put out 2 specials a year that were stand-up specials to highlight some of the comedians that we love. Maybe not even guest comedians, just comedians that we want that maybe got passed over by a Netflix or a Comedy Central. Sorry, I have the hiccups. But that was a great aspect. We did 2 in a row that both did well, but that's on hold right now. So those 2 areas I would really like to focus on. I don't really care so much about adding more shows. I feel like what I'd like to see is the 22 shows that are on the network to get to be as big as the top 5 shows, so that we're not either get to where we need you to be or don't be on the network anymore. Like if every show was 100,000 listener, everybody would be killing it and thrilled, but right now that's not the case. We have shows that have 500,000 listeners and shows that have a few thousand listeners. I'd like to get every show to be where they're happy and we're happy with them.
Yeah.
That would be my goal.
There you go.
And then have Spotify buy us for $500 million like they did with Joe Rogan.
Yeah, hey, the blueprint's out there. It's possible. They bought Rich Eisens, they bought a couple of others. And I think that if that is the route that you guys want to end up going down, I think it's definitely a possibility.
The truth is, it's funny, to be honest, Justin, I don't know if it's the route, because with that, just like you probably read about it with Joe Rogan, where a lot of the staff was upset. They felt he was being, insensitive in one way, shape, or form. When you're autonomous, that's not ever really an issue. I mean, it could be an issue, but every once in a while we get an email. Someone said something offensive. Like the best one, this is years ago. Someone sent me an email about firing Lewis because they should be off the network, not realizing that Lewis was an owner. Just kind of like, what am I going to? And I was like, I can't fire myself. So it just, there's something genuine about being autonomous and having that ability to do whatever the fuck you want. So I don't know for sure that's the answer. We've turned down a couple of times where people came to us for investing because I felt it came with some negative connotation. Yeah, too many strings.
Yeah, and I can't say enough good things about the shows that are on the Gas Digital Network, but there would definitely be some, if Joe Rogan got some people to walk out of work at Spotify, there'd probably be some people who would leave work
for sure
because of the Gas Digital Network. But here's an interesting one. How do you craft questions when you're interviewing people? Because when you're interviewing a porn star, you're gonna ask a little bit different questions than you would a rock star or comedian.
Right. So what's funny is that I've always loved the research. You know, I do think it's interesting. I do much more now than I did in radio. Why? Radio was I knew all those people. I know Judas Priest history. I knew Guns N' Roses history. And you only had 3 minutes on air. So how much are you going to get into with a 3-minute interview, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe 5 minutes if it was a really long interview. So it wasn't how much research you're going to do. For what reason? You're going to ask the same 5 questions and you're going to move on. But with SDR and the long format interview, I get to really research people and pull up things that maybe they've forgotten about or things that they don't realize. And I try to look at angles. I'll watch a bunch of interviews that have been asked and try to avoid the questions that have been asked before. Or if it's something I really wish I heard more about, I'll do that as well, you know? Yeah. So the most important thing I find is I don't have a script. I have bullet points. And I'll put them in an order where I feel that there's some sort of cohesion to it.
Yeah.
Understanding that I probably won't get to all of them. Yeah, yeah. I probably won't get to all of them. Yeah. I remember this goes back to when I interviewed Ozzy Osbourne twice in my life, right? Once on the phone and once in person. Wow. And in the in-person one, it was a very unique experience. Everyone had 5 minutes. There was 10 of us there, and it was in a row. You go, you go, you go. They just had record going, and you sat in, and they just turned you over. You weren't allowed to leave the room. You stayed in. It was just a conveyor belt of 5-minute interviews, right? Mm-hmm. And nobody wanted to go first. Everyone was nervous. I'm like, I don't fucking care. I'll go first, right? Let's do this, right? And it was back when his book first came out, his autobiography. And we had a great fucking interview. I had questions, but after the first one, I could tell this was going in a different direction. And I just went with him, and we just had a great 5-minute interview, right? I'm done. The next guy comes in. He's holding a piece of paper. He's shaking. He's asking a question. He's not even listening to the answer. He's moving on to the next question. And it is a very weird minute and a half. And then Ozzy looks around the room and goes, could we bring the first guy back? And it got a big laugh for everybody. But it just made me realize that so many people stick to a script. They don't even listen to the answer. They just know they have their questions. Yeah. So I try to have good questions, but I always try to also, more than anything, see where the guest is taking me. Can I joke around with him? Does he want to be playful? Does he want to be more serious? And you can kind of learn a lot from that. It's harder through Zoom, obviously, less body language, you know. But like, it's funny. I had Dave Landau on not that long ago as my co-host. He is Anthony's co-host on, or was. He just left the network recently. Now he's Crowder's co-host.
Steven Crowder, yeah.
Yeah. But we did the show together. I forgot who it was, but it was a really good interview. And afterwards, he texted me and said, you really made me realize I need to listen to my guests more. And I was like, wow, thank you. You know, that's cool. But it's just the art of, I don't look at it. Actually, sorry to go on so long-winded again. I did another show at Compound Media today. I was talking to Bill Schultz, who has a show there, who used to have Red Eye on
Fox.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about, said sometimes people will complain that we cut off the guests or we don't let them speak enough or whatever. And the thing is that I really try. It's not an interview. It's a conversation, right? Yeah. I want to have a back and forth. I want us to step on each other. I want us to be so excited that we keep getting involved with each other's conversation. It's not question, answer. And it's a different type of thing. And that's what I love.
Wow, we're very similar, and I think that's pretty cool. You say that you love doing the research, and I also love doing the research. And so when I was doing research on you, I found an episode of a show from the early 2000s called Queer Eye for the Straight Guy.
Ah, yes.
So
the good old days.
How was that? Like, first off, because the Fab Five seem like they're just super genuine. Is that the case? Do you is there a part of you that wishes that you were part of the new generation? Because that's kind of like the hot thing now.
Right.
And yeah, let's hear about
Well,
that.
I'll tell you, first of all, I hate the new show, right? I tried watching it. I couldn't make it through. It's too politically correct, too kumbaya. I miss the idea of just shitting on somebody, right? I really like the the shitting on somebody. You know, it's funnier when they make fun of you. You can't do that today, you know. So I love that. It was the greatest. It was a week. You know, you're supposed to pretend it's a day, but it was a week, and it was one of the best weeks of my life. I mean, imagine a week where everyone's job is to try and make you happy. That's basically what it was, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And it was the most watched episode of that series of all time. And why I know that's 100% true is just a few months ago, I shot a reunion special with them.
Okay.
That's going to be coming out, I think, next month or the month after. And I asked them that off air. I said, I was told that mine was, and they said, yeah, yours was the most watched episode of all time.
Oh, wow.
So
there's
a
season 1 too.
Yeah, season 1, second part of season 1. There is a new TV show coming out. I think it's supposed to be in April, called Reunions, and they get a classic cast together to do one more episode of varied shows. Okay. And this one, the first one, is Queer Eye. So they asked me to be the straight guy for the reunion.
Oh, so you get to be a part of it all again. Are they going to make
I
you
did it
over
again, but it was very different. It was more of I'll put it this way. It was misrepresented to me in the nice way possible. I'll say that is that I assumed it was going to be another full episode of the show with them getting me new stuff, because that's what they told me, that I was going to get a bunch of new shirts and jackets and product and blah, blah, blah. None of that happened. So it was really more a catch up than anything else.
Okay. Did you ever see the girl?
But super nice guys. Couldn't say anything else. Not greatest, super, super good guys. Carson actually did my radio show back in the day when it was huge. And then he also did SDR once too.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. It got to come full circle a few times.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you ever see that girl they put you on the blind date with again?
We ended up dating for a while, actually.
Nice.
I would say for like 3 or 4 months. And it's funny, I almost felt like we were a power couple for a bit, because anywhere we would go to dinner or anything, people would come up to us. Oh, I'm so happy it worked out for you guys. You know, we'd get dinners, Compton places. It was crazy. For about 6 months to a year, I knew what it felt like to be like an A-list celebrity, because that episode was so popular.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great show. And I agree with you. I do miss the shitting on people. Like, that is just something that you don't get a lot of these days, because, you know, I mean, any way I say it, I'll be labeled some kind of ist, but it's fun to shit on your friends. It's fun to just shit on people in general.
Right. Well, the whole idea of making fun of people and just, first of all, that's what comedians do. Not that I'm a comic, but comedians, all they do all the time is shit on each other. That's what they do. That's common.
Busting balls.
Yeah. And it's funny. I saw this thing. I forget. I wish I could give the right person credit for it, but I don't know who it was. But they said, tell me an expression a millennial wouldn't understand. And the guy said, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me, which is what you were taught as a kid. But now you can't say that. It doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah. That is a sad pillar of our existence now.
Yeah. And I don't, usually the people that get the most upset are not the people that are supposed to get upset. And the best example of that is recently, earlier this summer, I think it was, we had Sebastian Bach, lead singer of a very famous rock band called Skid Row, on. And he's known to be ill-tempered, to say the least. And I've known him ancillarily over the years. He's been on my old radio show a bunch of times, and I'd run into him here and there every once in a while. So I would say that I would never use the word friends, but if I saw him somewhere, we could say hello to each other.
Cordial.
Cordial acquaintances, right?
Yeah.
So he came on the show, and I remember saying to my producer, Shannon, even before we started, before Jay was on, this will not make it to the end of the episode. I don't know where it's going to shit, but it ain't going to go a full hour. I didn't realize 11 minutes into the episode, Jay would make a gay joke about Rob Halford, and it would upset Sebastian Bach so much that he ended the interview. 10 minutes into the show, there's a clip of it online. He gets visibly frustrated and just says, I'm not doing this, and ends the interview, right? Over.
Yeah.
Because Jay made a joke about Rob Halford. That's my friend. Don't you do that. But I kind of know Rob Halford. So we got Rob Halford on the show the next episode. And I made Jay he wanted to anyway, tell Rob the joke, the whole setup and the joke as to why it was said, because I knew Rob Halford well enough. I'm not going to say I know him as well as Sebastian, but I knew him well enough to know he is not going to give a shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him the joke, and he immediately just started hysterical laughing. And now we're working on putting on a roast for Rob Halford. So the argument I say is the guy that's supposed to get mad thinks it's funny. So why are you mad? It makes no sense. But that's the world we live in.
You know, that's actually the very first episode of the SDR show that I watched.
The Sebastian one or the
Sebastian one? The Sebastian one.
Fucking great. Yeah.
Because they had talked about it. They had talked about it so much on Skanks. I was like, I have to see this. So I went and I watched it. I was like, oh man, that was elevated.
Yeah, he got so angry so quickly. Hold on a second. I'm sorry.
No worries.
He got so angry so quickly that I couldn't believe it. And also, we did what you're supposed to do. Jay apologized. We pivoted away from it, thinking we could move forward, but he was out. He didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And then, I almost, which I realized nothing was going to come of it, but I was going to send him the clip of Halford laughing about it, just to show him that he had the wrong reaction, know? And I just didn't do it because I figured what is not my goal. I would love him to come back on the air one day and just say, yeah, I overreacted. I'm sorry. But I know him well enough to know that's never fucking happening.
Well, I mean, he does have that long flowing blonde hair. From the back, you could call him Karen. So that seems to be it. It's all white women getting upset for other people.
If I could pick a perfect time, we were going to try and do it this year, but obviously COVID prevented that. But if we get to do the roast of Halford next year, like let's say next summer, I would love to invite Sebastian and have him come on, that be a part of the roast. I doubt that'll happen, but that would be wonderful.
If there's a crowd, I can guarantee you I will be in that crowd.
Yeah,
it will only be my second time in New York, but I will be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd probably do it where he lives in Arizona. So we'd probably do it closer to him, maybe in Vegas or something like that. And I know already like a bunch of rock stars that would love to do it. And I mean, so many comics that would love to do it. But that would be a real moment if we get to do a Metal God roast. That would be heaven.
Oh, yeah. I can't think of anything I'd rather do, especially being so deprived of live entertainment for a year. And what's crazy. The real thing that sucks about COVID is like I had gone. So I've been in marketing for the last 2 years. And so that takes up all my time. I do digital marketing for weed.
Oh, good. That's cool. It's a good business to be in.
Oh, yeah. It's booming. But it takes up all my time. And so 2020 came around and I was like, this is going to be my year. I'm getting back into the shows. I'm going to go see a bunch of comedy. I'm going to go see a bunch of music. And then March 16th came around and I was like,
I had a conversation with one of my former interns from my old radio show, like in early February. I'm like, dude, there's so many good fucking shows this year. Faith No More was touring and System of a Down was touring and fucking Motley Crue was touring and all these. I mean, I was like, dude, we're going to go to fucking 25, 30 shows this year. It's going to be nuts. And then obviously the worst one, I forget who it was, but there was somebody I was going to go see either late January, early February. I'm like, yeah, you know what? They're going to be on that summer bill. Let's just wait and go see that. And I was like, what a fucking idiot I am.
That's the worst.
It's terrible. It's terrible. But you know what? If anything, to me, I look at what happened this past year, right? You really started to reevaluate who is important in your life, what's important in your life. I lost almost 50 pounds at this point, running and eating right and I really tried to make this the time to focus on me. Obviously, everyone reacts to this shit differently, but I now run 20 miles a week. I now work out 4 days a week, and I just really started meditating. I started really, just trying to find some sort of peace amongst the chaos that we went through. So I do think I hope these lessons stay with me and come out of this, in a better place for forever.
Yeah. And we're reaching the tail end, and you're talking about these changes that you made. So let's talk about real fast before you have to get out of here, because I know you got a heart out.
Yeah, I apologize. Yeah.
No. It is what it is. Tell us about the Good Sugar Show and how it came to be and what it's all about.
Well, first I'll show you my book. I don't know if you saw this in your travels. There's
I
a hold
sure
it up here.
did.
My 100% guide to weight loss and fitness. It's 2 pages. Chapter 1 is eat less. Chapter 2 is work out more. And 150 blank pages. Was number 77 on Amazon in December, which I'm very proud of. The guy that started it with me, his name's Marcus. He created one of the biggest raw vegan food companies in New York called Juice Press. There's 90 locations. He sold it a year and a half ago, and he wanted to do a podcast because he was quite honestly on a non-compete, and he figured it'd be a good way to keep his name out there while he couldn't be in retail and couldn't have a juice store.
Oh,
So we started together, and the concept was from the very beginning, try and make me a better person. Try and make me healthier. Try and make me not so, I don't want to say misogynistic, because I don't think I ever am disrespectful to women, but I do talk about my sexual escapades a lot, and that how that's a big part of my life, positive or negative, however you want to look at it. And we started doing the show together. It started to build, started to get a following. Then he wanted to open up a location for Good Sugar because his non-compete is up. And this week we opened, I'm a part owner of the Good Sugar pop-up, which is very healthy food, juices, all vegan, right in Manhattan on 2nd Avenue and 1st Street. And it's an interesting thing because I've never done it that way. It's a podcast marketing something, which is, I think, the best reason to start a podcast. For most people, comedians are marketing themselves, you know, so they fill seats, or these health people or these fitness people, whatever, they're marketing their books or their whatever. This was the only time I've ever SDR. All I wanted ever was people to listen. I don't care, you know, I don't have to fill seats anywhere. So this is a different way to look at it, where I went there today and there was a guy talking and looked at me and goes, dude, congrats on all the running. I'm like, oh shit, thanks, man. Like, I didn't know he was a fan, but he was a fan, you know? So that was great. And so it's an interesting, different way to do a show.
Yeah.
It's definitely a very different show than SDR. It's funny. The same week I was talking about yoga on Good Sugar and me trying to start it was the same week I did cocaine for the first time on SDR. So just kind of funny to have that dichotomy.
I thought you said not the drugs.
Yeah, I do one drug a year on SDR. I try one drug a year live on the show. So I've done 5 so far. And next one, which obviously we're going to wait till next year, we're going to skip a year. It's going to be not only me and Jay, but I have like 5 rock stars that now want to be there for the drug show, which is great. I don't know what drug we're going to do, but we're all going to do a drug together.
That's going to be good stuff. So everybody be sure to check out the SDR show on the Gas Digital Network with Ralph Sutton, co-hosted by Big Jay Oakerson. That is all that we're going to get to this time. Like I said, I'm going to ask you in a couple months to come back on, because there's definitely more that I want to
I also apologize. I sprung it on you last minute that I had to leave early. I just kind of forgot I had an 8 o'clock, so I had to do it.
It's all good. I had to cancel on you because my work decided to extend my work day on Tuesdays for 2 hours. Right. So it is what it is.
Yeah. So we both can blame each other.
All right. Well, I appreciate the hell out of you, Ralph. Thank you so much. That's it, folks.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Take care.